I want to take a moment today to talk with you about your proposals and give you hopefully some clarification on what the proposal looks like and how you might go about completing it. So first, reminder of some basic points. You've got up to 4 pages single spaced for this document. Uh, Typically, I find students need somewhere between maybe 2 almost 3 pages and maybe a full 3 pages to really make a good argument here. Some folks do want the full four. I can tell you from past experience, even with my own writing, if you have a 1 page proposal, you are definitely missing something. So if you find that you have a document that's the same length as your memo or shorter than your memo, you probably need to review the rubric a bit more closely. With that in mind, if you haven't already, make sure that you review the assignment instructions on Blackboard. They're posted in a couple places. And then make sure you read the rubric. And when you look at the rubric, be honest with yourself, as honest as you can. If you've got a draft done, look at the rubric and try to assess yourself and see, have you met the criteria as honestly as you can for the score that you're shooting for, which I think for most of us is going to be that right column. But certainly, at the very least, we want to be in the right 2 columns. So let's talk a little bit about the proposal. In your discussion board posts this week, you've been reflecting on the readings and reflecting on the purpose of the proposal and how you're going to use it. I want to suggest that you think about what the real life purpose of a proposal is. When you put together a proposal for a project, you're generally asking either for money for the project, space for the project, or time for the project. So you're trying to convince someone that this is a good idea and that this is something that you can complete. Keep that in mind. What I'm asking you to do is think about your project, tell me why it's significant, how you're going to make it happen, what the new insights the project will offer are going to be. So basically, imagine that you're asking for funding or that you're asking for time or space. With that in mind, I want to take just another 2-3 minutes and talk about some of the key points you need to hit. And these are points you'd be looking to include in official proposals. So if you were proposing something through a grant, if you were looking for funding for a project, if you were looking for permission to do research at an organization, or if you were looking to present at a conference, you'd be trying to hit all of these points. So the first thing is you need to clearly state what your research is going to look into, and you have to make it clear what the disciplines are. So I think the disciplinary part can be a little tricky, but rather than saying, I'm going to argue A and B, you're thinking about how you're going to make the argument. So are you going to look at public health data? Are you going to look at economic information? Are you going to look at political theory? Are you going to look at what biology tells us about something? You need to think about the specific disciplinary lenses like we talked about back in the first unit. You then want to make sure that you articulate why. So you started to do this in your memo. I've given you feedback to help you do this better. But what you're looking to do is make a case for why looking at something from this particular lens, this particular approach is going to be helpful. I think this can be a little tricky because we're asking you to take a step beyond, say, just writing a thesis statement. I'm going to argue A, B, C. And now you're going to think about how you would actually make that argument. What lenses or approaches would you use? The final disciplinary element to think about is you need to reflect on and show how bringing these ideas together will create new ideas. Many of you touched on this in your responses to the readings in week 2. Interdisciplinary thinking enables you to do new things. You come up with new ideas. When you take economics and public health and critical race theory, you put these all together, you come up with new ideas. So you need to at least be thinking about and reflecting on what new ideas, what new approaches your research is going to offer. Final couple points. You need to make use of sources from your preliminary research. So I asked you this week to get started on your preliminary research. This should give you some idea of what's out there. Now, you may not have 5, 8, 10 sources yet. You're probably just going to have maybe one source from each discipline. That's fine. In the next module, in the next unit, you're going to start putting together all of your research sources. But it's critical that you do preliminary research. You have to know what's out there. Many of you already did this for your memo, so you can potentially use the same stuff you did on your memo or the same sources and just tailor it to the new purpose. If you didn't do any preliminary research for your memo, that's fine. I didn't ask you to, but that would be a focus for you this week. The last thing you should think about, what are your next steps? So your final goal by the end of this course is to put together a video podcast. So think about what you want that video podcast to do. Do you just want to share this with other students? Do you want to share this with a wider community? Do you want this to convince people to do things differently? Do you want it to share new information about a problem? Do you want it to advocate for a new position or a new set of solutions? If you start thinking about that now as you do the proposal, your research will be much more targeted and more effective. So make sure that you consider final project as well as its audience. Who do you want to share this with when the course is done? So I hope this brief review has been helpful. As always, you can email me with any questions. Happy to meet with you via WebEx during my office hours or at other times. Good luck and keep up the great work.